serve. We're grateful to have speakers from both of our programs, Adult Literacy and English as a Second Language, who will share with you today. And we are so pleased and delighted that Tom Morris, a world-renowned philosopher, author, and college professor, will reflect on the importance of literacy. And I know that he wrote his book, Philosophy for Dummies, just for me. And of course, we couldn't have a literacy event without Commissioner Jonathan Barfield. He has been an advocate for the Cape Fear Literacy Council for such a long time. He will remind us of the impact of low literacy in our community.
Folks, we love this luncheon because it's another opportunity, obviously, to raise awareness about what we do in this community and to kind of a unique audience. This is not a gala party or anything like that. There are a lot of companies here. We're excited to have folks here to support this. It gives us an opportunity to raise funds, obviously, also. We are absolutely thrilled this year that Live Oak Bank was kind enough to invest a $25,000 challenge grant. So every dollar that you give today and that our other sponsors have given will be doubled by Live Oak Bank up to $25,000. So this has the opportunity to be the most impactful luncheon that we have ever had, and we are so glad that all of you are here. We'd like to thank our other sponsors. Our additional sponsors are PPD, Nancy Scott Finan, BB&T, Brady Services, Pathfinder Wealth Consulting, Sola Salons, Wilma Magazine and the Business Journal, and Sunrise Broadcasting. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I'd also like to recognize some of the Literacy Council team, if you will. I know, for example, that we have some students here, so any of our students, raise your hands. Raise your hands if you're a student. Yay! I know we have several volunteer tutors. I don't know if you know, we have a very small staff, but we have a large number of volunteers that work for this organization. So if there are any volunteer tutors or teachers, please raise your hand. Yay! If you are a current or former board member, please raise your hand. And then I do want to introduce you to one person. Where is Erin Payne? There she is. She's our Director of Fund Development, and she is really an expert in how folks can get involved individually. She heads up our Literacy Trust 100 program and would be more than happy to help you or answer any questions you have after the program. And there's a lot of information at a table out in the hallway when you leave also. She's that tiny little person in the red dress. And then I'd like any of you that have ever done any kind of volunteer work for the Literacy Council, raise your hand too. Yay! Okay. So hopefully some of you will be inspired today to get involved as a volunteer at the Literacy Council. We do truly depend on volunteers. You may not know this, but Cape Fear Literacy Council is a bit of a trendsetter in our state as far as literacy councils go. Our programming and some of the teaching and the tools and the materials that have been developed here at our Literacy Council have inspired others and are used across the state. So we're kind of a trendsetter, and that's kind of a big deal. Okay, folks, we want to get the show started, so take a moment to silence your cell phones if you have them. Make sure you remember to do that. Next up, I'm going to welcome to the stage Carol Milam and two of her students. Last year we served students from over 40 countries in our English as a Second Language program. And I'd like to welcome up AK2 and Neblut Pa and Carol Milam, their instructor. They are going to read the blessing for you. And afterward, Julie and the Readers Theater group will come up and do their performance of Survivors of the Titanic. Thank you all for being here.
Let us pray. Great Spirit and Creator, We are grateful for this food and will remember the hungry. We are grateful for our ability to read and write and will remember those who struggle because they cannot. We are grateful to all those who give their time, talents, and resources to build a community in which all adults have the literacy skills they need to build good lives. We are grateful for our students who learn to read and write English, whether it's their native language or their second, third, or fourth language. And we pray that literacy will transform their lives. We are grateful for friends and supporters of Cape Fear Literacy Council and will remember that this work would not be possible without them. We pray that what we do to support literacy may be for us an offering rather than a burden. And for those we serve, may it be the help they need. Amen.
See while y'all were praying, what it is. Yeah. Answer your prayer. Bring back.
Our students today have participated in a class that has studied history from pre-World War I to post-World War II. These 5 readers are presenting a script about the Titanic's maiden voyage. And, by the way, if you haven't heard, an Australian millionaire is building a replica of the Titanic with New World technology. It is set to sail in 2018, and I am sure you will find plenty of room on board if you're interested. Besides one-on-one tutoring, Cape Fear Literacy Council also offers small classes. These classes reinforce reading and writing skills, vocabulary, reading with fluency, as well as ESL and math. Readers Theater is just one of these classes, which helps students perform a staged reading of an adapted script. One of our readers, Morris Moore, has recently earned his adult high school diploma, and we are so very proud of him. Today's script will take you on that fateful journey of the RMS Titanic through the recollections of actual survivors. The readers are presenting those remembrances as if they are reliving the sinking all over again. We will now take you back in time. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the voyage as we take you back to Southampton, England, April 1912.
The Titanic is finished, built by the white White Star Line. This incredible ship is the greatest ever built. It is luxurious, it is unbelievably big, and it is unsinkable.
Please allow me to introduce myself. My name is Harold Lowe, 5th Officer Harold Lowe, to be exact. The date was April 10, 1912. On that day, I couldn't believe that I was lucky enough to sail on the Titanic's maiden voyage, a voyage carrying the lives of more than 1,000 passengers. And now here I am remembering that voyage and talking to you. I can't believe I'm lucky enough to have survived that great disaster. Here's what happened.
On April the 14th, the weather turns colder as we travel north. Iceberg warnings have been received over the ship's radio. So the captain posted lookouts. But I'm not alarmed. As third mate Miles Smith, I've been through worse. It's a moonless night and the sea seems calm. Suddenly, the lookout sights a dark object ahead. It's an iceberg and we are heading straight for it. There's no way to avoid hitting it.
At first, there's just a slight bump, but then a ripping noise fills the calm night as the Titanic grazes the iceberg along the right side near her bow. I think it was just a scrape, and the bow seems to have survived the crash.
Water is rushing into the compartments below, but we can't let the passengers panic. We have to do this in an orderly way, as we can keep the water out for a while, but it will make its way throughout the ship. We've got to get the passengers up on deck and into lifeboats.
And that's when I came in. And if I do say so, it was a good thing. On the deck, several crew members were struggling to lower lifeboats. It was a tricky task, taking at least 10 men to do so. The president of the White Star Line was given all kinds of instructions. And I finally had to tell him, if you would just get the hell out of our way, I should be able to do something. Do you want me to lower away quickly? I knew he was trying to help, but the way he was going at it, he would have drowned a lot of them.
Most passengers were still in their night clothes, but had thrown on warm coats, hats, shoes. People began to appear on the upper deck looking for answers.
I called out for the men to stand back. Let the women and children load into the lifeboats. Women and children first.
There wasn't hysteria, but a realization of the awful goodbyes to come. The men's face told it all. As the wives and children were lowered into the lifeboat, they knew they won't be saved, as there wasn't enough lifeboat for everyone on board. First class passenger Charlotte Collier was one of the lucky ones.
After hitting the iceberg, I still believed she was unsinkable. I dreaded the thought of leaving my husband as women and children began filling lifeboats. I would have stayed with him if officers hadn't pulled my daughter from my arms and placed her in a lifeboat. Officer Lowe shouted orders as I clung to my husband. Suddenly, a man threw his arms around my waist, pulled me away, and tossed me into the boat.
Officer Moody and I loaded lifeboats 14 and 16 and had them filled almost to capacity. Most were women and children, except for one sneaky guy who was dressed like a woman with a straw over his head. But I didn't know this at the time. Things got even more alarming as a group of men attempted to jump into our lifeboat. I had to fire my revolver into the air to scare these blokes away.
I watched in horror as Officer Lowe fired his gun. Startled, I looked around and recognized Molly Brown up on deck. Although a first-class passenger, she wasn't what one expected of a lady. She was a flamboyant woman with a forceful personality. Molly was tough with language that made one blush. She didn't stand around, but jumped right in and got the job done.
On deck, it was pretty disorganized. I didn't want to get off the ship, so I stayed, hurling women and children into lifeboats. All of a sudden, I was grabbed and heard these words, "You are going to." I was dropped 4 feet into a lowering lifeboat.
Talk about chaotic. One lifeboat being lowered nearly landed on another, almost crushing the people seated inside. Luckily, there were officers on board who were able to cut away the ropes just in time, and the boats were able to float safely away.
I spotted Elizabeth Shue, governor for the White Star Line, looking for a lifeboat. She was in charge of passengers' children on board. I can't imagine taking care of all of those brats.
I was able to find a spot on a lifeboat as it was midnight and I had no children to watch as we hanged 80 feet over the water. Our lifeboat swayed back and forth, and I was terrified after hanging there in midair. For what seemed like forever, we were finally lowered to safety. As we rode away, I looked back at what had been my secure home for the past 5 days.
In my lifeboat, I tasked one of the only male passengers to help me with the rowing. It turned out that he was a racket champion and was very strong and quickly pulled us away from the sinking ship.
However, on our boat, the men hardly knew how to row as a team. 2 oars were soon overboard, as their hands were too cold to hold on to them. I felt we would not be rescued as we bobbed about in the dark, icy water. Seeing other boats close by made me feel safe as I heard their voices carrying across the water. Some were even singing, "Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream."
Our boat was almost all women, and we grabbed hold of those oars and started rowing. I didn't know where we was going, but I knew we couldn't just sit there. I realized that the only crew member on board was worse than nothing. He was convinced that we was all gonna die. He kept whining. I wanted to tell him to shut up. Instead, I did what I do best, talk. I regaled them of stories of my life out yonder in the Old West, telling them about things none of them had ever seen. I still cannot believe that beauty of a ship was lost, and we didn't have enough time to enjoy it.
We watched as the lights went out on that beautiful ship, and we heard the band playing, "Nearer, My God, to Thee."
I sat and watched as light after light went out and the music grew fainter than nothing. Suddenly, I heard a male shouting,
She's gone, lads. Roll like mad, or we'll get the devil of a swell.
At 2:20 a.m., the Titanic finally slipped completely from view. As we rowed, I held my daughter tightly. I heard singing from another boat, and I didn't feel so alone.
You know, I survived that great sinking, but maybe what was more important, I did everything I could to help keep those people calm on that lifeboat. I sung songs, I told stories to keep them distracted. And that's why they still call me the unsinkable Molly Brown.
I gathered 5 lifeboats floating nearby. I made the decision to offload my passengers to other partial filled boats so that I could row back and look for survivors in the icy water. And here's something that might sound harsh. I knew I had to wait to go back, as there would have been hundreds of people trying to get in the few remaining lifeboats, and we all would have been lost.
I wanted to go back too and see if there was any more survivors. But with this bunch on board, we was lucky to stay afloat.
Officer Lawrence lowered 3 survivors from the icy water before he spotted a floating dog. Lashed to it was a Japanese man who looked to be frozen stiff.
I almost left him, but something wouldn't let me. We hauled him on board. I turned him over to the women.
We rubbed his chest, hands, and feet, trying to warm him up. Suddenly, he opened his eyes, rose up, rushed to one of the tired sailors who had been rowing. He pushed him from his seat and took over. We couldn't believe it. We had almost left him for dead and floating on that door. What a harrowing situation.
Eureka! At 4 a.m., we finally saw a rescue ship in a distance. Ice fields around us meant that it was too dangerous for her to move any closer. So, as tired as we were, we had to roll further toward the waiting ship. After being brined, salted, and pickled in mid-ocean, I was glad to be high and dry on Carpathia.
We too saw the lights of the rescue ship, but it was difficult trying to reach her. As we rowed, we had to dodge huge chunks of ice floating around, which kept us alert and on our toes.
I, too, could see the rescue ship. We were all exhausted from rowing, but luckily, our lifeboat was equipped with a mast and sail. Making use of a light breeze, we were able to tow one of the lighter boats. I had to leave 3 bodies, but I said to myself that I was not here to worry about the dead. I was here for the living.
It took 4 hours to rescue all the survivors from the lifeboat. They saved only 705 of us. 1,522 passengers and crew were lost that fateful night.
The sheer luxury of the great ship and her watertight compartments led many people to believe that the Titanic was unsinkable. Of all the things I remember, of all the things that went wrong, I can only hope that the future generations won't have to relive this horrible nightmare. That we have learned, while we are not invincible, we can better prepare for and learn from disaster.
adult literacy program. And I know each of those folks individually. Everybody who comes to us has his or her own special story, and it takes a lot of bravery. It's scary for me to be up here speaking to all of you, and so it takes a lot of courage to come up and read and to perform in a venue like this. And we're just so proud. We're so proud of our Readers Theater group. But each person, oh, and I do want to recognize also their teachers, including, if you can see him, Dick Robbins, happy 80th birthday. Dick has been a tutor and a trainer and a board member. He has fixed almost everything in the Literacy Council at some point in his life. So we're very grateful to him, and it's a team teaching effort, Julie and Anne and Brenda and Doreen, and they just love their students, and it shows in the wonderful performance that they're able to give. But you know, each student that comes to us has his or her own story. Each volunteer that comes to us comes from a different background, and there's something wonderful about the Literacy Council community and our partners. Cape Fear Community College staff is here, and we work very closely with them to help students who want to get into higher credentialing programs and to get job ready. We can help students get ready to a certain point, and then we help them transition to the community college. We work with folks like Interfaith Refugee Ministry to help their clients assimilate to America and to learn English. So it's an interesting, the Literacy Council is an interesting community of groups and of individuals, each of whom has come for his or her own reason. And I would next like to introduce one of our tutors. Her name is Lana Bucher, and she's going to share with you her story and her personal experience, why it matters to her to give back to the Literacy Council.
Здравствуйте. Good afternoon. You probably detected my Southern North Carolina accent, right? I will have to tell you my secret just in a few minutes. Perfect, thank you. I don't do it very often. My name is Lana Bucher, and I'm an ESL tutor at Cape Fear Literacy Council. For the next few minutes, I would like you to join my journey. Originally, I'm from Russia. I grew up 250 miles away from St. Petersburg, and I grew up in a normal working class family. My father was an electrician and a bus driver, and my mother is a chef, and she was so good at her job, so she was able to actually cook for Russian residents. That explains why I'm still learning how to cook. I grew up at the restaurant and was very spoiled by good food. Well, before I left Russia, I worked as an executive assistant for International Russian Steel Company. And I had a chauffeur and I had a bodyguard. Okay. I came to the US on my vacation, originally for 3 weeks. And that 3 weeks turned out to 16 years. Sounds great, right? No. But no one told me that my vacation will require me to work 3 times harder than in my homeland. I started as a volunteer in a few organizations here in Wilmington, and places like Taylor Hall, Keenan Auditorium. I even paint a wall and on the playground, Boys and Girl Scouts. And I taught photography class at Harvard United Methodist Church here in Wilmington. And, but I never thought that in a million years that I would be able to teach someone how to speak English. And now I would like to tell you my secret. It is my journey. My secret is my journey. From being a student to actually become ESL tutor. 16 years ago, I came to ESL class at Cape Fear Literacy Council. And it was my first ESL beginner class. Mr. Shirley Murray, she was my teacher, and it was really international class, and she was absolutely wonderful. And I was the only one from Russia there. It was really international group. And it was really, really challenging for me. It took me 1 year to use right pronunciation of the word squirrel. My poor cat Boris, the only one who understood my broken English. And when people in my dreams start talking in English, I started to lose my mind. It was absolutely crazy. The first time I went to an American grocery store, I was overwhelmed with so many choices. It took me 25 minutes to choose what kind of milk I would like to buy. My first telephone bill was almost $600. And I don't drink soda very often. And it took me 3 years to tell the difference between Coke and Pepsi. I think I like Pepsi the best. So as you can see, learning a new language is very difficult, and actually living in a new country, it's even more difficult. But it was all worth it, and I was able to achieve so many things. I was able to go to Cape Fear Community College, and I got my business and accounting degree. I was able to land a great job at UNCW, and currently I'm a student there as well, and I'm working on a bachelor degree in English. So you can tell that journey to becoming a tutor has been very rewarding for me. It allows me the opportunity to give back to the community. Now I'm teaching an advanced class, and my students come to Cape Fear Literacy Council to achieve their dreams of speaking proper English, going to college, getting a good job, getting a better job, and providing for their family and loved ones. And also to express themselves in English. So they came to class twice a week, each time getting closer and closer to their goals. The learning process is not the easy one. They work on reading, writing, speaking, and listening skills. It's very challenging for an adult to learn a second language. So do any of you actually speak second language? Can you raise a hand if you do? Can you speak 3 or 4 languages? Very impressive, thank you. Believe me, I understand it's a very difficult learning process. Someone told me once that after you learn the 3rd language, after that it becomes much easier. So I can see sometimes how my students struggle to find the right word, and learning English indeed is very difficult. But I believe in power of positive thinking, so every lesson I started with a positive quote, so it works pretty wonderful. And after all, indeed, Cape Fear Literacy Council makes everything much more fun and enjoyable. And I would like to say thank you so much for staff, Cape Fear Literacy Council ESL program. I would like to say thank you to Janice. I believe Alexis is right here. And Tanya, and for doing such a wonderful job working with students and with tutors. And I would like to say thank you for you, our audience right here, for supporting Cape Fear Literacy Council, because this program does really change lives, and it really changed mine. So I would like to say thank you so much for being here and give me an opportunity to talk to you. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you, Lana. I was so excited that she got to share her story, because that's a unique path to go from a student and then learn a language and then become a tutor in that language for others. So such an exceptional person, and we're glad you're a part of our organization. So next up we have another local gem, Mr. Tom Morris, who is a North Carolina native. He's lived in Wilmington for over 20 years. He was a professor at Notre Dame, professor of philosophy for 15 years. He has spoken all over the world. He's written over 20 books. And the professor, or the philosophy for dummies concept that Nancy mentioned earlier is very helpful to some of us, because it's just too much to go back and try to figure all that out on your own. So anyway, Tom's here to talk about the power of words, and I hope you'll join me in welcoming him to the stage.
Let me add my voice to those who are thanking y'all for being here today. It's so important. Literacy is one of the most important issues that so many of us hardly ever think about. Which reminds me of Socrates, who once said, the most important things we think about and talk about the least. The least important things we think about and talk about the most. We need to turn that around. And by y'all being here and showing your support today, you're showing that you're wanting to do something about an important issue we have. An issue I have to admit that I haven't thought about enough. Until I was sitting in my car just the other day. I got in my car to go someplace. I can't remember where I was going. And I hit the start button. And for the first time ever, I get this. Now, it's like, what? And so I hit another button. And I got this. And I'm going, what is going on here? Another button gets me this. Then my car starts talking to me in French. And it's a woman's voice. I mean, I started to explain, look, I'm happily married. I don't want to go on a joyride here. But I realize it's not an inviting tone of voice. I'm being scolded for something in French. So, at that moment, I had a realization. Let's see if I can get this to forward here. Huh? Go the other way. I had a realization. A revelation, really. An insight. Or as what my car would call it, une révélation and un pursuit. The revelation, the insight was this. The written word is everywhere, all around us. It's pervasive. It's ubiquitous. But if you're a reader, you don't even notice this, right? You don't even notice how the written word is everywhere. And how that might create a problem for the people who can't read it. This reminded me, as I was having this insight, of perhaps my favorite passage in the Bible. So I decided to bring it to y'all today. This is an important passage to me because I was once in the green room backstage at NBC at the Today Show. And for those of you who may not have been in the green room at the Today Show, first of all, it's not green. It's kind of off-white. And they have nice food. They have all kinds of things. I was waiting to go on to talk with Matt Lauer about one of my books. And I was real excited. You know, and there were other people in the green room who, you know, it was Isaac Mizrahi, the fashion designer, was sitting a few feet away with some of his PR folks. And there was a guy sitting across from me. I had just been told he had written a book about Princess Diana that had just come out. So I said, wow, you wrote a book about Princess Diana? He said, yeah. I said, well, have you written on other things? He said, yeah, I wrote a book on Elizabeth Taylor, and one on Marilyn Monroe, and one on Alfred Hitchcock. And I said, really? I mean, what kind of background, what kind of preparation prepared you for stuff like this? And he said, well, I have a PhD in New Testament from Fordham University. And I was like, really? And so I said to him out loud, in arche ein halagos, which are the first words here in front of me. And he said to me, kai halagos ein proston theon, which are the rest of the words in John 1, chapter 1, verse 1. And Isaac Mizrahi said, what? This is a biblical passage. In arche ein halagos. It's the only time New Testament Greek has ever been spoken in the green room of the Today Show. In arche ein halagos. In the beginning was the Word. Kai halagos ein proston theon. And the Word was with God. Kai theos ein halagos. The next phrase. and the Word was God. There is a major religious tradition in which the Word is pretty important. When you're writing, when you're reading, you're participating in something divine. You're participating in something profound. And yet we so take it for granted. I want to say something about the history of writing and reading in our Word. I mean, most people don't know this. You know the most ancient epic, the Epic of Gilgamesh? I won't ask for a show of hands how many have read the Epic of Gilgamesh. Really? I mean, this is awesome. Awesome. I had never read the Epic of Gilgamesh until about 10 years ago, and now I've read it about 10 times. It's the first buddy caper in all of human history. Gilgamesh and Enkidu go on a road trip, and it's a terrible leader who becomes a good leader through his confrontation with something we all confront, our own limits, our own mortality. It's an amazing story. 2700 BC, okay? It was written down. So there were people writing in 2700 BC. Well, obviously there were people reading, or it would never have been written down, right? But for a long time, the scholars of language have thought, well, there must have been not very many people back then who could read. There was probably just the select few, maybe the priests, maybe the leaders in any given society. But there was recently a discovery, an archaeological discovery in Israel, an ancient military encampment, and it goes back to 600 BC. And we discovered, you know what, literacy was very common in 600 BC. That's something nobody knew before. They found shards, broken pottery, with things written on the fragments of the pottery. And they were written in many different hands, so there were a lot of writers in this military encampment. And when you translate what was written, you realize there were messages written for the foot soldiers to read and to act on. So it wasn't just the leaders who were writing and reading, it was the guys in the army who were reading what was written on these pottery shards. In fact, my favorite shard, a Jewish commander, Eliashib, orders, and this is a translation, 3 baths of wine. Which as soon as I read that, reminded me of one of my favorite old sayings. Sometimes I take a bath because it's harder to drink a glass of wine in the shower. But lest you have a mental image like this of that Israeli military encampment in 600 BC, I should explain that I looked up what a bath is in Hebrew measurement terms. It's the amount of wine, you're told online. Now, it took a lot of research to find this out. It's the amount of wine that a 10-acre vineyard would produce. So I had to research that. And Sonoma, for example, a 10-acre vineyard will produce 50 tons of wine. Okay, let's assume that ancient agricultural practices weren't quite as good as what's going on in Sonoma right now, you know, where they do a mighty fine Cabernet. Let's imagine a fifth of that, right? So 10 tons of wine. And so this commander is ordering on a broken shard of pottery. He must be out of wine. He's ordering 30 tons. We know right away how the pottery got broken. And so don't envision this. I mean, it's more like this that we should recall it to mind. And no wonder the Israeli army had its ups and downs. Then in the same archaeological dig on another shard of broken pottery, another commander writes an order for a homer of wine. I didn't know what to make of this. Turns out that means 10 baths of wine. Now, this is crazy, right? This is in the ancient world. They had grocery lists on broken shards of pottery. We can kind of tell what life was like in the party time at the commando headquarters of the Israeli army. Writing has always been important. Reading has always been important. I mean, reading the written word has been important throughout human history. What does reading do? Well, first of all, it enlightens the mind with information. Right? That's a sense in which that's the most obvious level. But there's another level. It enriches the soul with imagination. Reading is not just about information. It's about inciting the imagination. Just think of the mental images you had when we were hearing the group read to us about the Titanic. You guys transported us to the ocean that night, right? The darkness of midnight at 2 a.m. I mean, I had never thought about the Titanic to the extent that you guys helped me do it when you were reading. Those words, first of all, they informed me, right? The number of people who died, the number of people who were saved, what it was like, what they were going through. But more than informing me, it got my imagination going, right? Really an important thing. The importance of reading. Well, I brought y'all some quotes. Maya Angelou, when I look back, I am so impressed again with the life-giving power of literature. Life-giving power. Kurt Vonnegut says reading and writing are the most nourishing forms of meditation that anyone has found so far. Well, I had to meditate on that one for a minute, but I realized, he's right. And of course, our master magician, J.K. Rowling, said, I do believe that something very magical can happen when you read a book. And again, we got a piece of that magic from our readers just a minute ago, right? It's incredible. In fact, Google decided to do a big research project a few years ago. They wanted to find out what makes for a great team. In any industry, in any business, whether it's real estate, whether it's financial services, whether it's medical care, whatever you're doing, what makes for a high-performance team? And after a lot of research, they drew some preliminary conclusions that, well, maybe diversity is really important. You've got to have younger people and older people. You've got to have people with different life experiences, people with different expertise. You've got to have people who complement each other. And they thought that was the end of the story. But then after doing deeper research, they realized as important as all that is, there's something even more important. That every high-performance team represents high levels of what nowadays is called emotional intelligence. The ability to relate to other people. The ability to put yourself in the place of another person. Reading good stories, Google concluded, encourages empathy. What's it like to be her? What's it like to be him? What would I feel like if I was going through what he's been going through? Google realized that empathy is the most important quality in high-performance teams. And as a professor at Notre Dame, I taught the national championship team of 1988. I knew these guys really well. And I knew they had a slogan. Their slogan was, I'm there for you. I'm there for you. They had tremendous empathy for each other. What do you need? What does he need? What does he need? They win the national championship of 1988. I've seen this played out across industries, across companies, the importance of empathy. One more thing that Google discovered that's relevant to us today. How do you cultivate empathy in people? They found out that the number one way of cultivating empathy is reading good books. Especially great fiction. Especially good novels. Well, speaking of fiction, I'll have that slip in there. I'm so glad that you guys are here to support literacy. If you knew my sales numbers, you would know I need more readers. But I've had an experience I've never had before. In February of 2011, I had just written 19 nonfiction books at that point, and philosophy and life books. And all of a sudden, in February of 2011, I'm getting up from the breakfast table and a movie starts playing in my head. It was like watching you guys read up here, but I was watching characters in the desert in Egypt in 1934. Why Egypt? Why 1934? And what in the world is this experience I'm having? It made no sense to me at all, but there was a great conversation between an old man and a young boy. And so I ran upstairs to my study and I started typing as fast as I could. And I've typed for 5 years. The movie played for 5 years. And I now have over 1 million words, 8 novels based in Egypt in 1934, 1935. I think it's the most important stuff I've ever written. This book has been out since September, and it's got only 5-star reviews on Amazon. That's the first time that's ever happened to me. People are writing me emails saying this book has changed my life. This is a short prologue to a series of novels that are an epic adventure that people are comparing to Indiana Jones and Harry Potter and Lawrence of Arabia and all kinds of things. So, as a writer, now reading these novels that I don't even feel like I wrote, I just typed. It all came to me. And I am editing right now, and so I'm experiencing these books as a reader. And I'm the most excited I've ever been. And I can tell my empathy level for what people go through has increased immensely just by projecting myself into the lives of these characters. It's just been the craziest experience. And so everything we do to help people prepare themselves to have those experiences of new information, those experiences of new imagination, we make a huge difference. I wanted to leave you all with one thought. One of my students at Notre Dame, she took her little girl to McDonald's, and the little girl's name was Dylan. Dylan was 4 or 5 years old. She was real little. And her mom, Mary Parent, my student, Mary decided to let her pay for the first time. So she gave Dylan like a $10 bill, and Dylan goes up to the counter, you know, and pays, and she gets the change, and they go sit down at the table, and Dylan puts, like it's a $1 bill, right in front of her. And she looks at it for a minute, and she says, "Mommy, who is this man?" And she said, "Well, honey, that's George Washington." "Well, where does he live?" "Well, he really doesn't live anywhere." "Why?" Well, he's dead." And all of a sudden there's this shocked look on Dylan's face, and she says, "Why did he die?" And she says, "Well, he was really old, and so he died." "But Grandma and Grandpa are really old," she said. And so her mother said, "He was really old, and he was really, really sick." And so she looks at the dollar bill for a minute, and she said, "He looks fine to me." I love that story. Because so often in life we look around and things look fine. But they're not. When I was called to asked to be with you all today, I was told what the numbers are in our part of North Carolina of the people who never had the opportunity to learn to read. I was stunned. It's like looking at old George Washington. You don't realize there's a problem. Right? You look around, it doesn't look like a problem to me, it looks fine to me. But deep down there's a problem. And by y'all being here today, you can really help to do something about this problem. The more I've heard about Cape Fear Literacy and the way they use your George Washingtons, they're the most efficient, they're the most loving organization. They make a huge difference in our community. So please, thank you first of all for being here. And please, do what you can with George today to keep this wonderful enterprise going. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Tom. I should have just rearranged things so you could do the ask at the end. You kind of brought the hammer there, so I may ask you back up here in a minute. A couple of housekeeping things. Number one, table hosts know to look to me for the cue after our next speaker when to open your envelopes and pass out the donation forms. But I want to make it clear, if anybody has to leave early for any reason, please let your table host know and we'll give you an envelope early. And another thing, I wanted to thank all of our elected officials that are here today. So if all of you would stand up for a moment, we want to thank all of you because you certainly have made a difference for us. And have been big supporters of the Literacy Council for years. Our next speaker has been a passionate and outspoken and energetic spokesperson for our organization for a number of years and has spoken at this event before, and he really has a first-hand knowledge of what we face and what folks that come to our organization face. Commissioner Jonathan Barfield.
Well, good afternoon. We're on a great day to be in the city of Wilmington and the county of New Hanover, celebrating the Cape Fear Literacy Council. So the word literacy means the ability to read, write, and use arithmetic. As a young boy growing up here in Wilmington, it was all about reading, writing, and arithmetic. The ability to understand the words that were on that piece of paper. The ability to add 2 plus 2 and know that it always equaled 4. I understand that there were some boys and girls that had not the ability to do just that. There was this great movie a couple years called The Book of Eli. And in this movie, here's this guy named, the character was done by Denzel Washington. He's a blind character, but you wouldn't know that he was blind. And he was traveling through the world with this book, and everyone wanted to have access to this book because inside this book contained the key to life. It contained the key to happiness. It contained everything that you would need inside this book that Eli was holding. To the point that men and women were willing to kill and sell their lives to have access to this book. At the end of the movie, this villain finally gets a hold to the book, and he goes to have it opened up, only to realize that the book was written in Braille, and he could not read Braille. To him, the book of Eli had no meaning whatsoever because he had no one in his town that could translate what the words in Braille meant to him. But this guy, Eli, who had the book, he had remembered the book, he had read the book in Braille over and over and over again. He knew the stories frontwards and backwards. So that no matter whether he had the book in his hands or not, he understood what was inside that book. As I was listening to our last speaker speak about the Bible, there's a phrase in Romans chapter 10, verse 17 that says, faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. So I would assume that God wanted everyone to have the ability to understand how to read so they can have faith in him. As an elected official, I believe it's my charge, along with our board of commissioners and others, to make sure that every citizen in our community has access to the ability to read, starting with our elementary schools. It is amazing to me the young boys and girls that I come across in our schools that don't have the ability to understand what's in those textbooks. And when they don't have the ability, they eventually drop out of school. Right now I'm mentoring about 5 young boys at Holly Shelter Middle School, and I got a call from the principal saying these young boys need to see someone like you to come in and kind of encourage them. So I sat down with them and I showed them this great movie, a clip from the movie Facing the Giants. And in this movie there was this thing called the death crawl where this young man had on blinders, and he found that he could do more than he thought he could do based on not looking at his circumstances around him. So I asked them, what is your giant? Well, Mr. Barfield, my giant is getting to the NFL or to the NBA. I said, no, your giant is really the fact that you are failing language arts. That you're not passing your math class. And without passing your math class, you can't go on to high school, and you can't graduate from high school without passing this math class. That's indeed your giant. We've got to find ways to get you a tutor to help you understand the basics of arithmetic. The basics of reading and writing. So now we partner these young boys with some folks that can help them understand how it is to get from point A to point B to realize their dream. I say, you know, if you want to go to the NFL, you got to be able to read a contract. Understand how much you're going to get paid in that process. So the other day I'm standing out in my backyard, and I'm looking at my backyard. I've got some really great birch trees that are hanging, and there's shade all over the place. Well, several years ago, I went out and I bought a bunch of zoysia sod to put down in my backyard, and I watered it till I couldn't water it anymore. And I got this water bill, and it came in, and I was afraid when I saw it because it was like $600. And my wife explained to me that she was not going to pay that bill. So time goes on, and this grass that I bought is started to wither and die. And now there are spots in my backyard where there's just no grass whatsoever. And what I understood is that these birch trees that I love so much because they cover my deck and they give me great shade, and I can sit out and listen to music and eat and have all these great times outside, that shade provides me comfort. Trying to decide, do I want the shade or do I want the grass? And what the grass needed was something very simple. It needed exposure. It needed exposure to the sun to grow and to thrive, but with the branches there, it was blocking the exposure to the grass, so it only died. And what I'm sharing with you today is that there's so many young boys and girls, so many men and women in our community that need the exposure of understanding how to read and write and use arithmetic. It's amazing what exposure will do for someone. There are boys and girls in our community that have never seen the beach, but they're 10, 12, 15 years old, but have never been exposed to what the beach looks like. Imagine that person that can't read and they get the ability to read and they're running through a field like tulips, jumping for joy, hipping around all the way, excited about this one ability that they now have to indeed read. And the folks in this room have the ability to unlock that key, just like in the book of Eli, to open up that door for individuals to have the ability to read. So we're doing our budget right now within county government, and you know, folks say the money is tight, we got a possible 5-cent tax increase, and we're going through our budget and we're looking at all the outside agencies of the county funds, and there was a line item beside Cape Fear Literacy Council, which have been receiving money from the county for years. But this time it said 0. And this is my manager's recommended budget. I said, well, who in their right mind would not fund the Cape Fear Literacy Council? Who would even in their wildest dreams put a 0 beside the number that used to be there and not fund the literacy? Who did that? Well, their mission, Cape Fear Community College, they're really filling the void. No, they're not. This organization right here provides services to a special audience in our community that the Cape Fear Community College will never reach. That sometimes our public schools will never reach. Because for me, it starts with this thing called passion, desire, understanding, empathy, the ability to meet someone on their level and to show them just the basics of reading, writing, and arithmetic. So now when you go back to the county's budget, the proposed budget, there is that restored number, in case you were wondering about that, from the other county. You see, for me, it's the responsibility of all of us, especially our government, to make sure that we all have access to the ability to read, write, and arithmetic. For some, it levels the playing field. For some, it puts a field out there for them to get on to begin with. For some, there is no field whatsoever because they can't understand where the field is, how to get to it, what the instructions are to indeed get to it. So the other night, I'm at home mesmerized watching the scripts spelling bee. And every year I watch this thing on TV, and so I brought all my kids into my bedroom so they could sit there with me and watch these kids. They were in the 6th grade. There was one kid who was 11 years old who was a co-champion in the script spelling bee, and I'm like, how do you learn these words? To me standing next to him, I'm totally illiterate. And I wanted to ask my kids, so what's the origin of this word? Can you use it in a sentence? Sharing what these kids are learning in the script spelling bee, and I guarantee that right here in Wilmington, North Carolina, in New Hanover County, we have boys and girls that have the same ability. But it takes people like you all opening up your hearts and sharing. So I would encourage you to be just like I am, someone who loves the Cape Fear Literacy Council, someone who's passionate about their mission, someone who's passionate about their vision, someone who's willing to give my own resources to this organization that they can go, grow, and thrive and help others, level that playing field, give exposure, allow others to grow and prosper, allow this community to be what it should be. So that when they open up this book that I love to read, and it says that faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God, they'll know exactly what that means, and their faith will indeed be increased. Not just in their faith in Him, but also their faith in themselves, because now I can be just like everyone else. I'm no longer different. I can take my children and I can read a story to them. I can hang out with my friends and not feel shunned or different. I'm just like everybody else now because I have the same ability to read, write, and use arithmetic. May God bless you all.
I'm really beginning to question putting myself at the end after those last two speakers. I'm not sure how this happened. Let me see if I can work this machine. Bam. Not very well. Anyway, You've heard from community leaders and speakers. You've met real students today. We have ESL classes that meet on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and the students are diverse. Their first languages are French, Spanish, Japanese, Russian, and Turkish. What they have in common is learning the English language. And they have become friends, and they help each other reach their goals. Students in this class can now say, "Now I can." Now I can vote. I passed the citizenship exam. Now I can help my child with her homework. Now I can go to the doctor without needing someone to translate. Here's one of our students, Clyde. Clyde came to us through a partnership with Link. I don't know if you're familiar with that, Learning into New Communities, Leading into New Communities. It's a transition program for formerly incarcerated folks. Clyde has truly informed and transformed his life. He's gotten a job, he's moved from Link to living independently, and advanced a full grade level on his last test with the Literacy Council. What's important to Clyde, though, is giving back through his church, and he's proud to say, "Now I can volunteer in the community and help others." This next gentleman is Ray. Some of you may have met Ray. You may recognize him from one of our YouTube videos. Ray struggled with his reading his whole life, but he credits the Literacy Council with having the right materials and a trained volunteer tutor that finally made the difference for him. We are so proud to say that this spring, Ray passed his final certification test for emergency medical technician. He is now full-time with the Pender Fire Department. His new problem is that both the EMS and the firefighters want him on their team. Ray is thrilled to say, "Now I can get a better job." Now, table hosts, if you would pass out the donation forms, please. You've been waiting on that forever. And real quickly, before we move on, I don't think we've recognized our full staff. I would just like Yasmin and the rest of the staff. It's a small staff. I would like Yasmin and the rest of the staff to stand up, please. Told you, there are not a lot of them. This is what the Literacy Council does. We help adults help themselves. When students improve their education, they make their lives better in very real ways. This positively impacts our entire wonderful community. Think about today as you pass the envelopes around. Did we share our message and our mission with you today? You've seen the stats that are scrolling by on the screens. This work is real, it's good work, and it's a powerful change agent in this community. Our mantra for our students is, "Now I can." We are passionate about Cape Fear Literacy Council. Now you can give with the same passion that we have for this amazing organization, this difference-making organization for the last 31 years in Wilmington, North Carolina. Thank you so much for your gifts and being here today. You will make a difference. I do want to let you know that Tom Morris has graciously offered to sign books after the program, and the proceeds from those books will also go to the Literacy Council. I meant earlier to thank my fellow board member, Vinod Ragra, for lassoing Tom into doing this particular luncheon, and Tom, you did an exceptional job. I want to thank all of our students and tutors and everyone that spoke. I want to thank you all for being here, and please, there's an information table outside where you can learn about volunteering or getting more information about what we do. The board of the Literacy Council is a hard-working, hands-on board. We are very thankful that you're here today. Again, remember, Live Oak Bank will double your money. When you're writing that check or filling out the card, Live Oak Bank is going to double your money today, so you're going to help make a huge impact. Thank you all for being here.
That's what I was thinking.
Nice seeing you.